Chapter 3. In a strong column, they had left the city of Yanil, with the townsfolk watching and making way for them to pass. As a single line they traveled, with conversations being held and preparations still being made even as they were on the move. Messages were sent up and back the column, and maintaining their accuracy as they went. The leaders sending instructions and warnings as they passed areas of possible danger or interest. Ladies talking to ease the tension and at times laughing, sharing a joke or warm story. Clan stories were often the favorite topic, and as their adventures had been many, the tales were many as well, full of battles and wizards, enemies and friends, joys and losses. Sometimes the clan would stop briefly when they came to a place where runes could be purchased or more food could be quickly caught. But brief stops they were, as they all knew they must quickly make it to their next destination. They skirted the port of Kahazard, which lay on the sea east of the fight arena where so many had fought and won. Some looked longingly at the trawler, wishing this were a day to stop and take a ride, collecting the mantis, a delicacy many of the ladies enjoyed. Others waved at old Murphy, who was standing on the docks watching the parade of warriors pass him by. They made their way past the monastery and the Ardone Zoo, and had now stopped in the city of East Ardone, where Salmon's pub was located. East Ardone was a busy town frequented by many merchants who enjoyed the trade centered in the city, and of course the inevitable thieves and bandits that seemed to follow the merchants whenever they set up shop or stall. The guards who patrolled the town square were often defeated when they tried to deal with the criminals, but some managed to jail the lawbreakers. East Ardone was nestled on the shore and lies south of the guild of master fishers who made their living off the bountiful catches there. Back in Salmon's pub, the four leaders continued to allow the women rest time, while they further made preparations. They sent out 3 of their best runners to scout the areas ahead and seek information. These scouts had instructions to be discreet and bring back any word of the Duke or the trouble he was causing. Although the ladies were anxious for their mission to continue, and some even longed for the clash of swords, they took the opportunity given to gather their strength, as they knew it would be needed. And there they awaited word from the runners. They also knew the more information they could gather before a battle, the better off they would be. Salmon had been busy wiping glasses in a manner that allowed him, in a not-so-sly way, to sidle closer and closer to the leaders who were still stationed at the bar. He seemed to be gathering his confidence, and finally turned to Fem to ask, "You're here over these matters with the Duke, then?" he said, not quite able to look any of them in the eye. "We are," Fem replied, staring at him and waiting for more. "I may know a bit about that," Salmon said coyly, as he wiped the beer mug in his hand even harder. The ladies all waited silently and patiently as Fem stared at him even harder, leaning in his direction. You could see his discomfort rise as he decided what else to say and seemed to want to back up a step. "A bit of coin might help me part with my knowledge," Salmon finally blurted with a false bravado. Fem bristled at the suggestion. "And your knowledge might help us save your tail? Which is more important to you, your purse or your person?" she asked as her hand clenched into a fist on the bar. He stuttered and stammered, while his face began to color quickly. The flush of his cheeks bemoaned his discomfort, yet he continued. "Well, the Duke sent his men through here only days ago. They stopped in here for refreshment and information from me, of which I gave none." "What? Their purses did not interest you, or were not heavy enough for your taste?" snarled Scrubs in his direction. His face showed even more embarrassment as he spit on the dirty floor before him. "I would not take their money for more than the ale they purchased. I played dumb with them, yet I am not. I listened as they drank and learned much that may help you. The gents from Newburgh, or Noobs as we call them, are not as smart as the Duke would wish them to be, but, from what I heard, they are strong in numbers, and many are also strong in fight as well. They may not be wise, but they have a growing force, as the Duke has promised them great wealth and land should his plan succeed. The leaders were learning nothing new from this conversation and were tiring of it. Lady leaned away from the bar, patting Moody on the shoulder as she said, "We may not match their numbers, but I say we double their minds." Moody and the other leaders, as well as the ladies close to them, laughed with her in agreement. Salmon continued, hoping now to gain the trust of these women. "I also heard they are very interested in your clan of ladies." And he rubbed the grubby glass still in his hand even harder. The 4 leaders waited for him to continue, and at length he did. "Well, I heard them speaking of a group of warrior women and how their mission was to gain more information from them. They also said something about a spy." Fem scoffed instantly and interrupted him. "The last spy in our midst was Curtex, and we dealt with her harshly. The incident will not be repeated. The Noobs can try as they might, but they will not infiltrate this clan. The ladies you see before you are honorable, and not a spy among them." Scrubs, who had become just as angry at this suggestion, nodded in agreement. Lady seemed to grow impatient with the conversation and said, "Have you nothing of importance to share, barkeep? If not, then go back to polishing that glass and leave us be." Salmon turned as if to walk away and then stopped. Lady stared at him, daring him to speak. "My apologies, ladies. I do also know that the Duke has established a base at the Red Dragon Isle where he and the Noobs are making camp. He wants to lure you there and defeat you in battle." Turning to look Lady square in the eye, he continued, "Please, believe my loyalties lie with you and the brave warriors here, and any other information I gather will be yours." He grinned slyly, "For free." The Lord leaders laughed and were joined by sisters in the room who had been listening with interest. The laughter stopped abruptly as the door to the pub opened. The light coming in backlit the lone figure that stood in the doorway as all of the sisters came alert. Hands went to swords, and quivers were discreetly adjusted to be at the ready. The tension level flew to new heights as the lords prepared to defend themselves and the patrons if necessary. A small sense of relief came over them as they saw the figure emerge into the room. A wizened old woman stepped across the threshold. Although no one completely relaxed, and their guards were never quite down, most could tell this woman was no threat. Her flowing hair was gray, yet full and long. Her face was lined, but you could see she had once held beauty. And her eyes were wise, as they darted over the inhabitants of the room. She walked with purpose, but also with age, and as she stepped up to the bar, there seemed to be an aura around her that even those not blessed with the gift of sight could sense. She smiled at Salmon, who immediately began to draw her an ale from the tap and placed it before her at the position she took at the bar. No one spoke as she took her first sip and leaned her slight frame, making herself more comfortable. But glances flew between the leaders, and a frown crossed Moody's brow. Some conversations around the bar resumed, although the leaders stayed quiet, discreetly watching the newcomer. After a moment, she said to Salmon, "I see you have a full establishment today, young sir. I hope it means a full purse for you too, since I know how you covet your coin." Salmon smiled at her as she passed him a few gold pieces in payment. "It may mean a coin for you as well." Shaking her head and looking hard into her glass, she replied, "Nay, I would never charge a lady of the Red Dragon for my services." Moody Angel spoke first. "Do we know you, milady?" as they all seemed to stare at her a bit harder. "Yes, you look familiar to me as well," Scrub said, always questioning. Lady now looked at the woman even more closely. And to me, the old woman now cackled an infectious sort of laugh, and she said, "Know me you may not, but my daughters you know well." A smile cracked across Lady's face, and she grinned with her. "I see it now. I would venture to say you are the mother of not one but two of our warriors, are you not?" The woman, Jarietta, only replied with a grin, and Lady continued. "It is a pity that neither are with us at the moment. We sent them ahead to scout for information, but it is certainly our pleasure to meet you. We have heard great things about you from your daughters." She turned to the other leaders. "Ladies, this is the seer Jarietta, and her reputation precedes her. She's the mother of our own, is she, and charmed." Realization had the leaders nodding and smiling, and Jarietta replied, "A seer I am and always will be, and if I may, I would like to read for some of your warriors." She glanced slyly at Lady and asked, "A battle is coming, is it not?" None of the leaders began to answer immediately, yet Jarietta just continued, nodding, still smiling her knowing smile. Finally, Lady quietly replied, "You may read for the ladies if they wish it," and Jarietta pushed away from the bar. Walking slowly to the closest table of ladies, she stopped behind Femme to touch her gently on the shoulder. "You will see him soon, child, sooner than you think. Let your mind rest until you do." As Femme turned quickly to look down at the old woman, she chuckled and shuffled to the closest table of ladies. Femme snapped back to look at the other leaders with a frown on her brow. They all knew of whom the woman spoke, yet no one said a word, and the conversation was dropped. Just then the door opened, and in the sunlight stood three sisters. The middle one, obviously injured. Blake. Several of the sisters hurried to help and take the weight from the ones who had brought her in. The ones who came to her aid were the healers of the clan, and they immediately began setting to work, helping her. Scrubs turned quickly to Salmon. "Is there a room available?" she demanded, but Salmon was already nodding and moving out from behind the bar. As he reached the injured warrior, he made a move to help carry her, and the healers stopped her. "We will care for her," said one of them firmly. "Please just show us the way." He again nodded and started towards the steps in the rear of the pub with the healers supporting Blake. They followed and went to a room on the second floor. As the group climbed the stairs, the leaders turned to the other two sisters that had just entered. Lady, frowning, inquired, "Charmed, is she? Do either of you require healing as well?" Both warriors stood a bit taller and shook their heads no. Charmed spoke first. "Ladies, we encountered several of the noobs west of Catherby. We had tracked them for several hours until one of them spotted us and they attacked. Blake was injured when she was nicked with a poison arrow, and our supply of anti was depleted. I'm proud to tell you they will not be returning to report to the Duke, milady, but we believe they were seeking information on us while gathering fish." "How many of them were there, is she?" asked Moody. 8 mages and warriors both," Ishi replied. "Well done, ladies," said Femme proudly. Lady smiled at both of the brave women. "Very well done, as was expected. Now, ladies, if you would, please sit with Femme and Scrubs and give them complete details of your mission. We need all the information we can gather at the moment. The healers will care for Blake, and when you are finished, I think there is someone here you may wish to see." Both ladies looked around the bar and spotted Jarietta watching them intently from a nearby table. Smiles lit all three ladies' faces, and the sisters followed the two leaders to a quiet booth in the back. There, several other women joined them. These were the women who served on the clan's high council. They served as advisors to the leaders. Misty Owl and Dark Passion taking the last seats and rounding out the group of women who would have such a big part in deciding the next step of their mission. Moody and Lady returned to the bar, which was unoccupied, as Salmon had not yet returned. Moody stepped behind the scarred wooden counter, refilling their glasses and frowning at the clutter she encountered. The mess back here reminds me of the one we currently find ourselves in. There are too many unknowns for us to plan effectively, and that concerns me. I agree, said Lady, and that which concerns you concerns me as well. She sat watching Moody as she straightened the glasses and began to clean up the clutter. Lady knew she wasn't even doing it consciously, just mechanically working, as her mind worked as well, giving her hands, which were almost never still, something to occupy them while she turned the current situation over and over in her head. She looked up at Lady with a glint in her eye. "You know," she began softly, "he may have information that would help us." Lady only looked at her expressionless, yet they both knew Lady knew of whom she spoke. Moody continued, "He wanders this world on his adventures, so he knows much. Yes, he is a loner and sticks to himself, but we all know his knowledge and contacts are great, and he would help if she asked him to." Lady smiled. "But would you ask that of her, knowing what we know?" Moody looked back down at the counter she was now cleaning vigorously and said, "She would do it for you." Sighing, Lady replied, "Yes, but at what cost to her?" They both knew the cost to both her pride and to her heart. After a moment of thought, Lady said, "Yes, she would. And I know this is a matter of grave importance, so I will ask her and only hope she forgives me for it." They both looked over at the table where Fem sat with the other ladies, unaware that she was the current topic of their conversation. Moody and Lady looked at each other again, knowing that what they would impose upon her was above and beyond what they should ask of any sister. Requesting her to contact him would be painful to her. But she would, as would any sister, do whatever it took to make their mission successful. And succeed they must, as the fate of all they held dear was at stake. As both Moody and Lady looked around the small room, they reflected on what lay ahead, and they knew they must not fail. The ladies of the Red Dragon would deliver the Duke of Chaos to his fate, no matter the cost.